Hello and welcome to another episode of Triangle Be Well. This is the really nice weather edition. It's in the 70s, beautiful sunny day. I just came from helping out in the garden with bees. We got a couple of beehives, and my wife, who's the beekeeper, just basically wrapped me up in beekeeping equipment and protective gear, and just I was like the assistant at the surgery. You know, hand me the brush, hand me the bee tool. Okay, give me that super, and it was really fun and a little bit exhilarating and a little bit nervous and just fascinating to be standing there, getting a chance to look at what bees do, and just tens of thousands of them in each of these colonies. We just brought them home yesterday, plopped them in the hives, and they just know what to do. They're cleaning out the old honeycomb. They're making the hexagonal little cells for honey and for brood. They're kind of nice. They didn't try to attack me. They seem very chill. And so that's where my mind has been on the drive over here from Pittsburgh to the studio, where I'm joined by our producer Amnon Nisan. Hello, Amnon.
Hello, Howard. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Missed you.
Yeah, I was gone last week, but I was doing some good work, learning from my friend and mentor Peter Bregman. And I'll be talking at some length about some of the things that I took away from that I think would be helpful to folks as they go for healthier lives. So this is it's a health show, but it's also a coaching show. So if you would like some coaching on health, on behaviors, habits, on living your fullest, healthiest, wellest life, you can get in touch with us. There's a couple of different ways. You can pick up the phone and you can call this 10-digit number, 919-518-9773. You can also Skype, and the address to Skype into here is Computers 2K Voice. Computers 2K Voice on Skype. So, bees, beekeeping, honey, comb. It's I'm still a little bit high from. Also, we were one of the things you do when you want to calm down bees is that you get some smoke, and I think I might no, it was perfectly legal smoke. It was an herb that had dried, but still a little bit excited and high from all that. But I'm bringing myself down. The other really fun thing that happened today was when I sat down in this chair, Amnon started laughing, because I forgot the cardinal rule of the blue screen, which is you don't wear blue. So last night, before we went to bed, my wife and I were tooling around on YouTube, and she was watching these videos about like security cameras capturing the paranormal, like women screaming in hotel rooms and there's nobody there, or the nighttime camera at the office showing all the computers flashing on and off at the same time, and file cabinets opening and files flying out. And so, if you're ready, I'll give you a little scare here. Show you how this works when I don't wear the shirt that he gave me to put on. I become.
It was worse. You want to see what it was?
Yeah, let's give us the full effect. Okay. So I'm just a floating head and a couple of arms. Ooh! So I hope this is the scariest thing you encounter this week. Oh my goodness! You've been holding out on me. I did not know you had sound effects. You mean all this time, like I could have said something smart and you could have had people applauding, and you just didn't do it?
There we go.
Where I don't hear it. All right. Well, I guess I have to earn the applause. I don't get applause for
Yes, you
nothing.
do.
Oh, thanks. So, a couple things before we get started talking on today's show. Again, if you want some coaching, call up. We can talk about you obliterating the obstacles and barriers to enjoying and participating in healthy lifestyles and diet. So, coming up, Tomorrow, actually, I'm really excited about an interview I'm doing for my Plant Yourself podcast. It's with Bob Cafaro. I think I may be pronouncing that correctly, or Cafaro. And he wrote a book called When the Music Stopped, and it's called My Battle and Victory Against MS, or Multiple Sclerosis. And I found out about him through a mutual friend who did a review of this book, and I wrote to Bob and asked if I could interview him. And the story is really remarkable. Bob is a cellist for the Philadelphia Orchestra, and he, as the story suggests, was diagnosed in late 1999 or early 1999 with multiple sclerosis. And it's not supposed to be a curable disease. The best you're supposed to be able to do is manage it. But he threw himself 24/7 into a battle against multiple sclerosis, and he fought it on many different fronts. He fought it with Western traditional medicine, he fought it with diet, he fought it with mental toughness. He writes very interestingly about seeing some studies early on and being really intrigued by this idea of placebo, that there were two groups. There was the group that was in the study getting the treatment, and the other group was getting the placebo, and they got better too, compared to people who didn't have anything. It's like, how did they do that? And instead of saying the placebo, with the way Western medicine does, is the placebo is something we're supposed to get out of the way so that we can discover the truth. He says there's truth in the placebo, which is our minds can affect the physiological happenings in our body, can affect our health. And so he then started a quest to find out who are the people in the world who had overcome tremendous hardships and obstacles and odds and survived. And he looked at the guy Nando Parado, who had been one of two survivors of a plane crash of a rugby team in the Andes, which was the subject of, I think, a 1976 or so book called Alive. He looked at Lance Armstrong, who clearly a lot of what he's accomplished has been discredited, but coming back from advanced metastatic testicular cancer and then winning the Tour de France. I don't care what you're juiced on. If you come back from that, there's something to be learned from that. From other people who had just overcome incredible odds, from people who had become single-minded champions, people like Bobby Fischer, the chess player, Nolan Ryan, the baseball player, and others. And he puts it all together in this very, very funny and compelling look at what it took him to defeat an incurable disease. And by defeat, he means defeat. He's got some pictures in here of the lesions and on his brain, and from August 1999. You probably can't see it too well, but these are it's a photo of the lesions there, and then another 2013, another scan showing no lesions whatsoever in the brain. And the final picture in 2011, reaching the summit of Vale Pass, holding his bicycle over his head. This is from a guy who, during the throes of his disease in 1999, could barely walk 5 steps and was going blind. So look for that on plantyourself.com. It'll be out in 2 or 3 weeks, but the interview is tomorrow. If you have anything in particular you'd like me to ask Bob, you can email it to me, hj@plantyourself.com, or you can post a comment or question on the Plant Yourself Facebook page. Might be fun to get some audience participation into that interview. Anyway, that's coming up tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it, and I think you will as well. Now, let's... last week, or 2 weeks ago, last time we were here, I talked about something called Bright Spots, which was from the book Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard, by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. And I was planning on continuing to talk about that today. There's the whole first section of the book is around directing our minds. And so I was going to talk about critical moves and pointing to the destination, but I think I would like to talk about some things I learned at the coach training that I attended with Peter Bregman. And right now I'll just pause and see, Amnon, is there anyone who is raising their hand in the queue who has any questions?
No.
No. All right. So Peter is an old friend. He was actually my first boss in the business world from 1999 to 2001, and he runs Bregman Partners, which is organization development firm and leadership development, and he does it through coaching. And so Peter is highly focused on outcomes, on business results, which is a little bit unusual in the coaching world, and that coaching tends to focus a lot on, at least for personal coaching, for development coaching, tends to focus on who you are as a person and kind of overcoming obstacles. And coaches are really not supposed to go in there with an agenda. Like, that's one of the no-nos when your coach goes in and says, okay, here's what we're working on. The coach is supposed to be totally neutral, and the client says, well, here's my agenda. I'm worried about this today, or I had this negative experience, and it's very, very client-driven. And for Peter, it's not like that. That the outcome, the organizational outcome, or if you're coaching an individual, the individual outcome that they're going for has to drive every conversation. And if you're talking about things that aren't related to the big conversations and the big goals, it might be fun, it might be helpful, but you're not getting your money's worth. So Peter's coaching is highly focused all the time on pre-arranged, pre-agreed outcomes, which he calls your wildly important things. The second thing is that there are many coaches and coach organizations and coach schools and coach philosophies that do focus on outcome, and very often they tend to discount or ignore or shove under the rug deep human emotions. That we can have one or the other. As my grandfather was apparently said after he slugged someone on the street who was lying on the street corner and shouting, "Iodine, police, iodine, police." My grandfather replied, "Which one do you want? You can't have both." Which I never understood, but it was a great joke in the family. But iodine or police, you can't have both. And you can either have results or you can have deep personal transformation. You can't have both. But Peter's work is based on the fact that not only can you have both, but it's almost impossible to achieve those outcomes without transformation. In other words, if you could have achieved this outcome without changing yourself, you would already have done it. The things that hold us back tend to be pretty trivial if it's not a deep personal transformation that needs to happen. Well, you don't have a space to do it, so you find a space. You don't have good time management skills. Well, they're easy to learn. There's 1,000 books out there on time management. You can buy yourself a timer. You can get free timers for your browser. You can set your phone alarm. Time management is never the real issue. But the real issue is almost always an emotion, a feeling, a fear. And I come across this a lot in my coaching, where I'm working with say, two different people on changing their habits, on becoming well. And maybe, let's say the two people have equally dire prognoses, whether they're terrible or not so terrible, but let's say that it's the same. And they have similar means in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of knowledge. And yet the two people will respond very differently to coaching and will have very different behaviors and ultimately very different outcomes. And I wonder sometimes, what's the difference? And for a lot of people, here's what I've discovered. The question that I ask myself in terms of whether this person is going to be successful making this change is, do they love themselves? And that's about as soft and woo-woo and touchy-feely as you can get, right? And if I'm coaching someone in a corporate setting, it's hard to go there. It's hard to ask them, do you love yourself? What do you deserve? What do you feel like you deserve? But ultimately, that's a really big question, and it comes up again and again in terms of health behaviors. Because I can teach people what to eat. I can tell people what to eat, 20 minutes tops. I can give people the basic framework for their diet, right? We've talked, you and I have talked about this. We can brainstorm, okay, where are you going to shop? What are you going to cook? How do you set up a routine? It's not easy. It's not simple. There's a learning curve. But we learn things all the time that we didn't know how to do before. For example, most people I know can tie their shoes. I remember learning how to tie my shoes and wondering how I was ever going to master this thing. It just seemed I'd watch people tie their shoes, and no matter how much I slowed it down, it just looked incomprehensible. And then one day I got it into my fingers' muscle memory, and I've been tying my shoes ever since. No applause for that? I can't believe it. I've been tying my shoes ever since. This is fun. We gotta do more sound effects. I gotta find out what the list is, or maybe I'll just challenge you. Maybe I'll just say things,
Oh, geez,
and then I'll give you that look and say, what sound effect can you come up with here? So I've been tying. Okay, I won't. You don't have to be threatening. So, what are some other things I've learned how to do? I can do multiplication. I had to memorize we only went up to the 10 times table. Nowadays, kids go up to 12s, but that seemed impossible. Driving. Remember the first time I drove a car? I could not imagine how you could possibly have it go straight. Every time it kept turning over to the side, and then I'd overcorrect. And the first time I stepped on the brakes, and the car would just slam to a halt. I couldn't imagine how you could ever get a feel for that. But these are all things that they were hard at the beginning, but learning them wasn't that hard. There was feedback, and there was really no obstacles to learning it. It was just a matter of exposure, deliberate practice, and some help along the way from someone. Occasionally people give me little pointers. And just like you wouldn't say to a kid who my son is 16 and a half now, and soon he's going to get his driver's license, and he's been practice driving for about a year. And I would never say to him, Elon, learning how to drive is really hard, and not everybody learns. Not everybody can do it. So, we're going to try real hard, but, don't get your hopes up, because driving is just hard. Nobody says that to their kid. You say, okay, yeah, it's going to be hard. You're going to learn how to drive. When I started teaching each of my kids how to drive, the word hard didn't come up. The word was more like, I'm terrified. How am I ever supposed to teach them how to drive without putting them in situations where their and a bunch of innocent people's lives are kind of in the balance here to see, are they going to, stop at the red light? Are they going to look before they switch lanes or turn? A million and one things. But in spite of all that, my daughter can drive. My son should be able to get his license. There's an inevitability to learning a bunch of things. And so the things that we have trouble learning, or the things that we have trouble bringing into our lives, there's something else going on. You can't tell me that learning how to cook a dozen or 24 healthy meals and prepare them and have the ingredients and store them and serve them, you can't tell me that that's harder than learning how to drive a car.
I don't get it.
Okay. That one I don't want to hear again. That one just pushed all my buttons. I'm gonna have nightmares about that voice. Was that part of like the Microsoft sounds, or did you actually have somebody record that?
No,
it's one of the sounds. Okay. I could record a whole bunch of things like.
Go back.
Thank you. That never happened.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking I should record a whole bunch of things people say when I'm coaching them, and I can just play them for myself to practice. That's a good idea. So, if you're having trouble learning something, almost certainly, unless it's like really, really like stuff that nobody masters, like you say, I want to become a neurosurgeon. Well, that's going to be hard. There's not that many people achieve that. I want to become an Olympic archer. Okay, that's going to be hard. It's going to take a lot of work. Your 10,000 hours or so, you could get there. But things that people are supposed to be able to learn in a reasonable amount of time, and you're not learning it, and you're not working out, you're not going to the gym, you're not going for walks, you're not getting up in the morning and doing calisthenics, you're not going swimming. When that's the issue, there's almost certainly an emotional component to it. Some sort of feeling is stopping you. And so that's why in the Bregman Partners coaching model, you have to balance the achievement with the emotions. And in fact, you use the emotions as a diagnostic. And in fact, let's even say it a different way. You use the lack of achievement and accomplishment as a diagnostic to say, okay, here we found an emotion. And let's now deal with that emotion so that we can move forward, so that we can achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve. By suppressing it or ignoring it, pretending it's not there, or just powering through it, we're going to have a suboptimal outcome this time, and whatever emotion it is that's stopping you from doing this thing right now is not going to go away. If you somehow manage to get somebody else to do it for you, that emotion is still there. So really we're talking about using accomplishment, yes, for its own sake, but mostly for a diagnostic for self-growth, for our ability to experience and deal with and tolerate all sorts of feelings within us, and then being able to go out into the world and perform even while we're in the grip of those feelings. All right? We're not trying to do presto change-o magic and eliminate the feelings. And there's a lot of modalities that try to do that, say NLP or various neuro-linguistic programming and various things like that try to say, okay, you've got this, let's say a fear of, or let's say you just you don't like feeling bored. When you're bored, it's actually very uncomfortable because other feelings come up that you're trying to eliminate. So, feelings of I'm not good enough or nobody loves me or whatever. So whenever I'm bored, those feelings come up. So whenever I start to feel bored, I become agitated and I need to eat. And so my eating is therefore triggered by this feeling of boredom, which is masking feelings that I don't want to feel. And if I can become adept at saying, okay, there's this feeling inside me of not good enough. And you know what? Feeling it is not the end of the world. But if I don't feel it, if I do everything in my power not to feel it, I begin to fear the feeling much more so than I should. That once we experience it, it's tolerable. So I don't need to say, okay, I'm going to reprogram my brain so that I never feel like I'm not good enough. Suppose I can't get rid of that feeling, no matter what I do. Hypnosis, psychotherapy, NLP, encounter group, firewalking, jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. Whatever I do, I still have that feeling of not good enough. So am I then going to say, okay, well, I can't seem to get rid of this feeling, so it's going to stop me? No. Why not say, I may have this feeling for the rest of my life, and I'm going to act anyway. So the feeling doesn't have to determine the outcome. It doesn't have to determine my destiny. And as Peter points out, really interestingly, the way to get rid of that feeling is by acting while you're having it. So if not being good enough makes me agitated, and so then I'm bored, and so then I eat, then what if I just sit with I'm not good enough, and I sit there and I don't eat? Well, what I've done is I've just taught myself something really interesting. I've just taught myself, well, maybe I am good enough, because I was able to do something I hadn't done before. I feel pretty good about myself. And it's experiences like that, whether it's not eating when I'm not hungry, or whether it's making a salad instead of reaching for a spoon in a jar of chunky peanut butter, or whether it's making those 5 sales calls a week in spite of my fear of rejection, or whether it's rewriting the homepage of my website, or whatever it is that whenever I start to think about it brings up these feelings. As soon as I start to take action towards those things, then the feeling can stay, but it loses its power. So you ever in a room with like a radio or a TV on and you can't turn it off? You can't control it. Like, at a restaurant, there's a TV on, or there's a radio on in a waiting room or something. And let's see, maybe it's like a talk radio show and it's stuff that you don't agree with. All right? You don't have to do what the words say. Right? You can hear it. If you could turn it off, cool. That's like cool. Just go turn it off. But if you can't turn it off, you don't have to focus on it. You can try to focus on other things, but sometimes maybe it's too loud or too strong, or it keeps drawing you in, or you don't have enough else to focus on. You can listen to it. You can hear it. You can take it in. You can sit with it without going out and doing the things those people say you should do, or believing the things they say you should believe, or feeling the things about other people that they say you should feel. You can hear it, and it can just allow it to be noise. In other words, it's not personal. What those people are saying doesn't necessarily have anything to do with you. And the voices in our heads that say, we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not blank enough, we're not lovable enough, whatever it is, those voices of negativity, we think they're us and we think they're truth, but they have no more truth than a radio that we didn't turn on. And you know what? If we didn't choose those voices either, right? It wasn't like, before you're born, you go to this big vending machine and you say, okay, well, what repetitive voices do I want in my head for the entirety of my life? Yes, I will take 6 ounces of self-loathing, please. Let me have a cup and a half of self-doubt. Let me have 3 pints of irrational hatred toward people who don't look like me. Like, we didn't choose any of this, right? It got introjected into us. It got thrown into us somehow. It's the words of our parents or other people that we have these events in our life, these encounters, and it's usually when we're very young and we get a mistaken impression, and the thought gets lodged inside us. And because it happens usually at a very, very young age, it doesn't go in logically. And when it doesn't go in logically, you know what? It doesn't go out logically either. So I have clients who are tremendously successful by any measure. They are running companies. They're making more in a year than I will make in a decade. They're happily married. Their kids love them. They're pillars of their communities. And yet, when we get down to the deep coaching sessions, they feel the same negative things about themselves as everybody else.
Self-destruct.
Exactly. They feel like frauds. They feel like no one really understands how stupendously incompetent they really are, and that one day everyone's eyes are going to be opened and they're going to get fired and they're going to get divorced and they're going to be estranged from their kids and they're going to be lying in the gutter. And they believe this. So if you take someone who's making $500,000 a year, is the head of a company, has been wildly successful in everything he's done, and he believes he's a complete and utter fraud, do you think that belief is amenable to logical refutation and disputation? It isn't. That's why when we try to argue with it, if you're a coach and you're coaching someone else or you're trying to deal with your own stuff, it doesn't really help to say, well, yeah, but I make a lot of money, or yeah, I help a lot of people, or yeah, I had a surprise party and 150 people came, and so I must be lovable. Right? We can rationalize all that stuff and still maintain this core belief of unlovable, unworthy, untrustworthy, a fraud. So the answer is not to argue with the belief, to muster evidence to overcome the belief, but instead it's simply to feel it so it loses its sting. When I was out there with the bees today, there were 700 or so bees just buzzing around me, being curious. But I was a little on edge, but I couldn't say that I was actually nervous. I wasn't impaired in my ability to follow my wife's instructions, and I was enjoying the experience. I can remember it now. I was within myself. I was present to the experience I was having so that I can call upon it. But the first time that I worked with bees, that's not the case at all. I was utterly terrified. I was almost unable to move. I was shaking. They were surrounding me, and I was still, I was still wearing the beekeeping suit. I was wearing a veil. It was cinched tight. I was wearing long gloves. I was wearing the shirt with the sleeves inside the gloves. Like there was no way that those bees were going to get to me. I was a fortress, and yet it didn't matter because the perception of the danger far outweighed my rational knowledge that there wasn't any. So, coming back to earlier today when I'm working with the bees, I didn't try to talk myself out of the fact that they were dangerous, because I knew that there was no danger the first time. I knew that I was well protected, and had they tried to sting me, they wouldn't have succeeded, or if they had, it would have only been one or two, and it would have been very light. But the fear of being stung was overwhelming because it hadn't happened. Now, if you do it enough, if I go out enough and when I work with bees and I never get stung, I could acclimate a little bit. I can calm myself down a little bit. But here's the weird thing. It's actually experiencing the fear, the thing you fear, that allows you to relax. So there was a time when I was not working with bees, but I was standing with like a can of soda, and a bee lit on the soda, and I didn't see it, and I lifted it to my face, and the bee got scared, and the bee stung me on the hand, like right between two knuckles, the little fleshy part here. And you know what? It hurt like hell. It hurt. It wasn't like, oh, this is nothing. It was like, this is really annoying. It's burning, it's stinging. And what I learned from that is that even though it hurt like hell, I survived it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't ultimately that big a deal. And part of the hurt was the shock and the fear and the seeing it. And from that time, that was like my first bee sting since I'd been a little kid, then I know, okay, it's not going to kill me. There are people for whom bee stings are potentially lethal. I'm not one of them, thank goodness. And if I was, I probably wouldn't be doing bee work. But it was actually the experience of living through the thing that I feared that then made that was the big breakthrough in saying, okay, if that's what could happen, I could deal with that. That's not going to be the worst thing in the world. So if you are unable to commit to your diet because, and you're not really sure even why, but you're like, I say I'm going to do this, and then I find myself 11 o'clock at night with the spoon in the peanut butter jar again. And I keep telling myself not to do it, and I keep on doing it, and I don't understand why. I don't understand what's stopping me. Maybe, then we can go to the more superficial elements of life. So I'd say to someone, why are you buying the peanut butter if you don't want to eat the peanut butter? And sometimes, it's on them. And they'll, yeah, I'm buying it. I buy it in a moment of weakness. I go to the store when I'm hungry. And we can talk about all that stuff. We can talk about when do you want to go shopping, having a list, getting accountability with someone else so you only buy things on the list, all that stuff. Sometimes they say, well, it's not in my control. Other people in my family eat the peanut butter, and it's just around. I have kids. We send them to school with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. The peanut butter's around. And we deal with all this stuff, all this tactical stuff, all the strategic stuff, but eventually, if we can't solve it, there's this gaping hole in our understanding of the situation. And that gaping hole is inevitably some feeling they don't want to feel. And we have to identify it and bring it up and feel it. And then we start to make progress. Any questions? Nobody. All right.
No, they're not, lab is about to go.
Well, boy, it'd be great to have somebody to coach right now. You got anything you want coaching on? publicly on the air?
Football?
Football. When you say football, do you mean football or soccer?
Soccer.
Uh-huh. Thought so.
No, I mean, I gotta say that when we were talking about food and medication and all that,
Mm-hmm.
I did cut back on medication. My numbers are better.
Oh, cool.
It makes no sense though. It's
No?
actually better
Without the medication.
with less. I cut it in
less.
half.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I don't understand.
Well, so one thing is, right, whenever when I was learning how to drive, and before I understood the relationship between my hands on the steering wheel and the wheels, I would overcorrect all the time. And so imagine that I had very poor vision. Let's say the windshield was very, very dirty, and or and I couldn't see out of it. But somebody behind me, somebody next to me, was sticking their head out the window, and they were saying, "Okay, all right, you're too close to the right. Go left, go left, go left. No, 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 too far left. Go right, go right. All right, oh, steady. Now left, now right." And I was steering like that. I would never get the hang of it,
Right.
right? Because there wouldn't be enough feedback.
Right.
I would be just overcorrecting. So when you're taking drugs, that's essentially what you're doing. Because the drugs are overriding your body's natural control mechanisms for homeostasis. So the drugs, our bodies are incredibly smart. Drugs aren't smart. Drugs just go in and they're actually very, very clumsy and heavy-handed. Right? Have you ever heard of a drug that didn't have side effects?
No.
Right, because it can't, because everything, it affects the whole system, and human beings are like, well, this drug is going to do that, right? The drug is going to increase the insulin receptivity of the cells,
Mm-hmm.
and it does that, and it does 12 other things as well, right? And some of them are, bearable, and some of them are less, and some of them don't happen to you and only happen to other people. But it's a very, very blunt, clumsy instrument. It's like trying to drive with your elbows or your knees, which is not something that I would ever do.
Oh, no, I can do that pretty good actually. The knees.
Driving with the knees, right? While you powder apply your makeup for an important meeting, right? So when your body is no longer able, when you've eaten a certain way for a certain amount of time, the body loses the ability that it had in our natural environment. So that's what disease is. It's a breakdown of this homeostatic mechanism, a breakdown of the body's ability to self-regulate. So then we bring in drugs. And when we don't change the diet, when the cause of the dysregulation is still there, it's like lurching from side to side. It's like driving that car with a windscreen so dirty that you can't see out of it. And the drugs are like saying, okay, a little less, a little more, a little less, a little more, and you don't actually learn anything. But when you clear the windshield and you reduce the drugs, now your body has to step up. Because your body's always trying to do the right thing. Your body's never going, screw it, I don't care. Your body is desperate to live and be well, right? Which is one of the, we talked about this when we talked about diabetes, that it's actually a response. It's an adaptation to a diet that's very, very rich, a 24/7, 365 summer diet. Then the body says, okay, well, we've reached a point where the cells are saturated with fat, and now we're going to make it harder for more nutrients to get in because we're full. So the body is employing that kind of homeostasis, but the 24/7, 365 summer diet continues, and so it becomes overwhelmed, and so that's when the meds can be helpful in stabilizing. But when you go back, when you start eating a healthier diet, and your body's physiological environment is returned to a more normal standard state, then if you keep taking the meds, your body doesn't learn. But when your body then learns and recovers, it can make, if you're taking Humalog or Lantus, if you're taking an external insulin, when do you take it?
Before you eat, supposed.
Right. So do you know how much do you know how much you need?
I guess the doctor tells you how much you eat.
Right.
You
So
know.
at any given moment, you're making a rough approximation.
Mhm.
So this is how much I need. All right, I'm going to have two. I'm going to have two carbs. You do a little calculation. All right, I'll need this much. All right. The way it works, the way your pancreas actually works is, okay, I've just taken a bite. Okay, we're going to release exactly the right amount of insulin at the right time. It's going to go to the right places. Right. The hormonal system is so much smarter than an injection system.
Sure.
So when you allow yourself to heal, that's a definition of healing, that your body gets smarter and it's able to steer itself without needing that kind of help. So that's one reason that your numbers can get better when you cut down, because you're letting your body, which is so smart, do much more of the work.
Yeah, it probably goes, hey, I remember you. I remember you coming in here some years ago.
Yeah.
And now it says, okay, nobody's pushing me, so I'm going to do my job.
Right, right. And I'm not being pushed. I'm not being
Right.
overtaxed.
Right.
I've had a little bit of a rest. So very cool. Very cool.
Yep. I'm satisfied.
Cool.
Take,
Well,
take that extra medication
mhm.
and
No, don't do that. Think of the fish. Did I talk about this? Did I talk about this study that came out last month of fish near Seattle, in the Puget Sound?
I don't think so.
Oh man, these if you just eat this fish, you don't have to take any prescription meds because it's all in the fish.
And you can have all the diseases because they have everything.
Yeah, well, and the cures. So they found birth control medication in fish. They found estrogen. They found antidepressants. They found cholesterol lowering statins. They found hypertension medication, and in pretty high doses. So this is we don't excuse me. We don't want to flush your meds down the toilet.
Well, let me tell you something. This is not too long ago, about 6 years, 7 years,
Mhm.
when Kathy's mom passed away. She had a cabinet full of medication.
Uh-huh.
And I said, okay, what's the right way to get rid of it? So I called this city. Or the poison, whatever, I figured somebody would know.
Yeah.
And they both said, flush it down the commode. Just flush it down the commode. This is the
Yeah.
people that are running our city.
Yeah. Well,
So is that thing about don't flush it, is that a recent thing?
no, I think we've known about this for a long time.
Yeah, see?
But
I mean, we didn't
yeah.
flush it down.
Yeah, but here's this is not uncommon, and this runs across almost everything in our society. Where are you optimizing for the individual or for the good of the society as a whole? So, for example, if you go to the doctor, or you have a kid who goes to the doctor, and you have let's say your kid has a sore throat, 3-4 years old, and they have a sore throat. The doctor could take a swab, a culture of the throat, send it out to a lab, and find out in 3 days whether it's strep throat or not. In most cases, it's not strep throat. In most cases, it's viral, which is not affected by antibiotics. And in most cases, if it is bacterial, it's still not strep, and it's still going to resolve in a few days. But there's a small chance that it's strep. And if it's strep and you take the antibiotics, you'll start feeling better in 24 hours, and strep unchecked can lead to significant problems. So the doctor thinks, what are the upsides of prescribing antibiotics even when I don't know what it is, starting right now? The upsides are, if it's strep, we could save a lot of pain, we could save a potentially dangerous situation down the line, and the parents are happy because I've given them a drug, I've helped their child, I've done something. What are the downsides of giving an antibiotic? The downsides are it's probably not
Manageable.
necessary. Right? It's going to destroy their good bacteria, their gut bacteria, and it's going to lead to antibiotic resistance in those strains. If we keep giving the same drug to the people, eventually, you know, if 99.99% of the bacteria are wiped out by the antibiotic and only 10 bacteria remain, they're the ones that are going to recolonize. They're going to start dividing and being promiscuous with each other. They're going to start being promiscuous with other bacteria that don't have the knowledge of how to fight, and they're going to get it from them. So we're creating, through this action, the downside is a public health disaster writ large if enough people do this. But when doctors make that decision, do they think about public health?
No, they think about their patient.
They think about their patient. So that's, you know, very, very similar situation to, well, if you flush it down the toilet, you'll, you know, they want you to protect yourself from it. They don't want it sitting around in the house for some kid to have it, or for you to get up in the middle of the night and be confused and take the wrong meds, or to, you know, potentially overdose on it. They just want it out of the house. And so by saying flush it down the toilet, they're taking care of you at the expense of the entire ecosystem. So another example of this are building codes, where the codes for safety of a building, for fire codes, for wiring, for plumbing, for what kind of materials you can use for structural integrity. The only thing that those codes really care about is that the people who are in the building don't get hurt. So you can't use certain flammable materials. You know, everything has to be up to code. The codes do not look at, does this building material cause cancer in the people who manufacture it? Does it destroy the environment where it's you know, produced, where it's milled, where it's grown? Does it create air pollution somewhere else? Does it create so much waste that we can't use the land for something else? Right? So all of these sort of bigger picture questions about the entire ecosystem are ignored when we're talking about building codes. And this comes from a friend of mine, David Eisenberg, who runs the Developmental Center for Appropriate Technology. He's been fighting for 30 or 40 years to change building codes to be more environmentally and globally conscious. So we're not just saying we want the people in this building to be free from harm, but we want to build buildings so that everyone is free from harm. So it's part of that big mindset.
To go back to the antibiotics.
Yeah.
So if you have strep and you take antibiotics, it's going to help you within a day, or let's say 2.
Yeah.
So why don't doctors give you 2 days worth and say, let's see after 2 days how you're doing. And then if it didn't help, then you know it's not strep.
Right.
And then just don't continue.
Right. Here's why they don't do that. Because if you take it for 2 days, you're going to kill all the stuff that's easy to kill. And therefore, the stuff that might be harder to kill, you could get it in 10 days. But in 2 days, you've just you know, taken care of the low-hanging fruit.
Okay,
as
so
it were.
you only feel better after 2 days. It's not like you start killing the strep in 2 days.
You'll kill most of it. But the point is, if you want to kill it, you're going to try to kill all of it.
Right. But
So therefore, yeah, for in 2 days, it might return. You know, if you just take it for 2 days, it might return, or it might not return, but you then still have this culture of semi-antibiotic resistant
yeah,
bacteria.
but you're missing my question. You're feeling bad. Your throat
Yeah.
is hurting and you're
Yeah.
feeling bad. You take it for 2 days. If it is strep, you're going to feel
Feel better.
If it's not strep,
If it's not strep,
you're not going to feel better.
right? But these bacteria are broad spectrum. They don't just attack strep; they attack all the bacteria in your body.
Right.
So therefore, even if you say, okay, I still have a sore throat after 2 days, therefore it wasn't strep.
Right.
Therefore I can stop.
Yeah.
You've still destroyed a whole bunch of bacteria in your gut, in your lungs, everywhere there's bacteria, you've essentially just gone in with a high-powered machine gun and randomly slaughtered. So
But isn't that better than taking it for 10 days?
no,
If it doesn't do any good, if
No.
you don't have strep.
no,
Okay.
it's not better if you just do it for 2 days, because you're now selecting. If you do it for 10 days, you're getting close to a clean slate. So then you can take some probiotics and start over. If you do it for 2 days, what you're basically doing is saying, let's kill all the law-abiding citizens. Let's take all the people who are unarmed, who aren't going to run away, and we're going to leave the toughs and the thugs.
Okay.
So it's a selective
Alright.
culling of precisely the kind of the most defenseless.
Now, when you take the antibiotics
Yeah.
and you get it for 10 days, how long does it take your body to recover if you take probiotics?
It depends
Roughly.
on the person.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to recover. You can actually take probiotics while you're taking antibiotics, as long as you take them several hours apart.
Right.
So you can constantly, because the probiotics they don't have probiotics with strep. Extra, with 50 billion units of streptococcus. They don't come like that. So they're basically just a couple of strains that are the gut strains, the Bifidobacter and the Lactobacillus. So you can just take those. Now the trouble is that we don't really know all the bacteria that are living inside us, and there's some bacteria that have basically been wiped out over a few generations, that a lot of people just don't have them anymore. We have no idea what that's going to do to our health over the long run. But so some people will not feel anything in particular. Some people might take a week or two. For me, if I don't take probiotics every day, I start feeling it, because I am never going to be fully colonized, because I was a cesarean birth and I was bottle fed. Plus I had tons of earaches and infections, and I was just, I was practically on an antibiotic drip, for most of my childhood. So, it doesn't matter. I'm never going to be able to turn, Mordor into the Shire. I'm always going to have to be supplementing to have a healthy
Well,
to have
at
a
least
healthy
there
enough
is
gut.
something to supplement.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So I think we've come to the end of another hour. I hope the coaching stuff, just to put it in context, it's important for coaches, obviously, and that's why I went, because I do a lot of health coaching. So the framework of feeling the feelings and moving forward anyway is very, very important to me. But even if you're just coaching yourself, there's definite advantages to having a coach, to having someone else. And one of the main reasons is our blind spots. That I don't care how self-aware you are, all of us have blind spots. And there's things that are screamingly obvious to other people that we have no idea about. And even when they sort of tell us, our friends tell us, or family members tell us, it's easy to become defensive or to become dismissive. The coaching relationship, when it works well, one of the main things is that coach can reflect back to you those things in a format that sink in, and you get to hear and you get to start experiencing it. So once we can have your blind spot and then move it and shift and grow when you discover the blind spot, and it's reflected back at you. So being coached is really, really valuable. But a lot of what I talked about today can be done by yourself. What we have to do is become aware enough of those micro feelings, like the feeling of, I'm a little bit bored, I'm going to go eat something, and understand that little bit bored feeling, instead of dismissing it as something inconsequential, is the tip of a very, very, very large and scary iceberg that we don't want to look at. And so if you're listening to this and you have no intention of coaching anybody ever, still that's kind of a point that is a really useful takeaway for any of us on this journey of growth and healing and wellness and self-discovery. So, Amnon, thank you so much. Yeah. If you're looking for a coach, one who's fresh off of a coach training. Look me up. I'm at trianglebewell.com or tbwell.com if you're only interested in typing in 6 letters before the .com. And I do coaching, and I have a concierge wellness practice. So what that involves is you have a health goal, and it might be maintaining health, or more frequently, it's you've got a problem and you'd like to overcome it and fix it and heal from it. And we work together and we look at the research, and I help you become an informed consumer of this research. So I help you go through all of the evidence so that you can make an informed decision about your own healthcare. And then a lot of folks discover that one of the things they want to do is adopt a lifestyle and diet change. And they discover that it's harder than it looked, and that's where my coaching comes in. So if you go to Triangle Be Well, there's a whole bunch of things to download there. You can get the GPS healthcare report. You can watch videos. You can see old shows. This is where I post the Triangle Be Well show from Nissan Communications. I post the YouTube call at trianglebewell.com, and there's blog posts and audios and interviews and all that good stuff. So I wish you out there in internet land a happy well week, a week in which those little tendrils of feeling allow you to go deep and discover the things that are holding you back so that you can move forward without hesitation, without doubt, without limits. And as always, be well, my friends. Woo! Woo-hoo!
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.